here tonight, thank you for coming back. And if it's your first time, it is wonderful to see you for this very important presentation in the life of the church. As you know, we have one more of these next week, and that will be our big brainstorming session. We will get started at 6:30. There is a process for how we're going to have you brainstorm. Right. We will be around tables for that. So that's all set up. The Faith Formation Committee has been super helpful in that regard. So we do want you to come back for that and share your opinion on what the church should be doing for the next couple of years with everything that we've heard. So encourage you to do that. It is a pleasure to welcome our panelists this evening. I'm sure some of you know them, but as we've been doing before I formally introduce them, I want to talk a little bit about the arts in the church and why this topic is important to us. So, go ahead. Okay, so we've been asking this every week. How do the arts connect to faith? So art is a gift of God. Presbyterians believe that painting, sculpture, and other art forms are gifts of God, who inspires people with the ability to create artistic designs and to teach these skills. We read in the Bible of artisans who were called by God, and we know it still happens today. Throughout the Presbyterian Church, faithful artist members celebrate God's gift of creativity and explore together with heart and hands and voices what it means to be made in the image of a creating God. But I will be honest with you, our history with the arts has been mixed. So, over the years, controversies about the use of art and images have arisen in the church, and this is the church universal. We'll get to John Calvin in a minute. So, not exactly the friendliest when it came to the arts. The second of the 10 commandments forbids the making of an idol or a graven image, and this commandment has been interpreted to mean 3 different things. 1, we are not to make any images at all, through painting, sculpture, drawing, photography, or any other media. We are not to make images of God, is the second one. Or 3, we are not to make an image of something else and call it God. So in the 8th and 9th centuries, a church-wide theological struggle began over the use of icons. At the heart of the controversy was the accusation that Christians were worshiping paintings of Christ and other holy figures. Roman Emperor Leo III led those who publicly opposed icons, going so far as to destroy an image of Christ that had hung in Constantinople's imperial palace. Leo may have been motivated by a desire for theological and scriptural purity, or he may have seized on the controversy as an opportunity to increase the emperor's power. We don't know. So, throughout the next few centuries, things got a little better until the reformers came along. All right. So, 700 years later, in their break with the Roman Catholic Church, the Protestant reformers echoed the ideas of the Roman emperors Leo III and Constantine V. They called for a return to proper practice of the second commandment, which is in the first square. In Zurich, statues were pulled down and church walls whitewashed by the followers of Zwingli, one of the most zealous of the reformers. In some churches in Holland, stained glass was replaced with clear glass, and walls were whitewashed to cover painted decorations, leaving only memorial plaques to break the monotony of the plain walls. This led to one critic's characterization of Protestant churches as places of death. Have any of you ever been to Calvin's church in Geneva? It looks a little like a place of death. And to be equal opportunity against the arts, Calvin also ripped out all of the organs too. Is that right, Michael? Yeah? That's what I always heard. Okay. As somebody who took the organ in college, I always heard He ripped them all out. So, the reformers were not impressed with the argument that images painted on walls and formed of colored glass in windows were a way to teach the stories of faith to illiterate worshipers. Calvin insisted there would be no illiterate worshipers if the church were doing its job. So, if you were here last week, you remember the importance of public education to us. All right, so today's Presbyterians believe that because God exists in time and space and took human form, the things of this world matter. Throughout Scripture and church history, material things have been used to exhibit the power and grace of God. In fact, I would argue that the arts have actually become more prominent in the past few years, maybe 5 to 10 years in churches. Presbyterian Outlook, which is the only remaining magazine of the Presbyterian Church, about 4 or 5 months ago, dedicated a whole issue to the liturgical arts. There's definitely a movement afoot in the church to raise up the arts throughout the life of a congregation. So, some words about the arts at First Pres. First Presbyterian Church has a legacy of religious art that dates back to the church's foundation in the early 19th century. That legacy, which began with the love of church music, has extended into a program of gallery exhibitions, music concerts, and full-scale year-round theater series that may be unique to the country. This was a quote. A lot of this came from John Tolley's dissertation, actually. What we do on the stage is really a way of getting a sermon across. It's a way of building building community. I think that was Herb Weir that said that. From an early paper, and this was written by David McCants, the drama ministry stated the following. I would argue, though, that this could be said about any of our arts ministries. The program has developed an awareness of human relationships and ethical dilemmas which could not have been accomplished by any other medium or aspect of the church's program. The program has created respect for the church in important groups, not usually inclined to expect artistic and social leadership from religious institutions. The program has enhanced the reputation of the church among the general community of cultured citizens. And the program has stimulated interest in an important art form among young people, the creators and consumers of art and religion in the future. This actually hit home with me. I was at a women's fun luncheon today, 400 people in attendance over at PFW. Sitting on either side of me were 2 women who work for Arts United. And I said, told them what I did. They knew all about the prom, currently running in the theater. They said, it's so great that you're doing that show in your theater. We can't wait to see it. Her son was in Head Over Heels, which ran in the theater. And it just was a really a proud moment for me to be able to say that the church was hosting this show. And we had a panel discussion after the prom on Sunday, and a woman came up to me after that panel and said, you are the 3rd institution to try and do kind of a show along these lines that could be somewhat controversial. And of course, we all know what happened with Carroll High School, and that show shut it down. She mentioned another show that the institution shut down. And she said, do you realize that you are the first institution that has not shut it down? Wow. I was really proud of that, especially because we're a church and we're not always known to be kind to the LGBTQ community, to say it like that. Okay. So, some areas of concern noted early on in John's thesis, which I want to point out was written in 1989. Are we here for entertainment or education? We still wrestle with that. We're all going to talk about that on the panel. Quality of production. What is it about? Is it about putting on a quality production? Is it about giving people an opportunity to be on stage or hang a piece of art in the gallery, or a show in the concert in the music series? We still wrestle with this as folks are putting together the seasons. Personnel. What kind of staffing do we need? You'd be amazed at how much we wrestle with that, because personnel costs money. And we still wrestle with the finances, about what it means to support these things, what piece does that have in the church's ministry, all of that sort of stuff. So, all right, next one. So, Brittany Hall. I want you to meet Brittany Hall if you have not yet met her. But Brittany is the president and CEO of the Fort Wayne Philharmonic. With tradition and innovation, she seeks to deepen community connections through the power of music. Past executive director of the Binghamton Philharmonic in New York, among other leadership positions in the music field. She served on numerous nonprofit boards and has an MS degree in arts administration and a BA in music industry. So I'm guessing many of you know John O'Connell. John has directed shows in our theater. John is currently a professor of theater and dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts at Purdue University since 2012. John received his MFA in stage directing from the University of Alabama after spending 13 years in New York City as a producer, stage manager, and director. Prior to arriving at Purdue Fort Wayne in 2007, John spent 9 years at Arkansas State University, where he was head of BFA and director. And Charles Shepard, president and CEO of the Fort Wayne Museum of Art, has been involved in making, presenting, teaching, and introducing people to art for over 40 years. He has been a professor of art history, senior curator and director at 3 university museums, most recently the Lyman Allen Art Museum at Connecticut College. And I just shared, I am a Connecticut College grad. Before accepting his post here in 2003. Charles's first position after finishing his graduate work at the Sterling and Francine Clark Art Institute at Williams College was as the executive director of the Michigan Guild, where he was responsible, among other things, for the Ann Arbor Art Fair.
That's a big deal.
We have some Ann Arbor people here. The Plymouth Art Fair and the Ann Arbor Winter Fair. In 1987, Charles became the founding director of the University of Maine Museum of Art. And then in 1993, he served as the founding director of the Kennedy Museum of American Art at Ohio University. Charles is an avid reader of both fiction and nonfiction, and currently most of his reading is in support of his research into the relationship between American history and American art. So. Thank you all for being here. I think I shared with some of you last week that we Zoomed probably, 4 to 5 weeks ago now. We did not lack for things to talk about, so I think our time together will go very quickly, but I have done plenty of talking, so I want to turn it over to the 3 of you to just state a little bit about who you represent here, and if you could name 1 or 2 exciting things that are happening for you right now in your organization. Who wants to go first? Want to go? Sure.
Okay, well, I'm Charles, and obviously I represent the museum, but more importantly, I represent an attitude, if you will, which has led me from these collegiate jobs to the Fort Wayne Museum of Art. And essentially, what I saw as my university posts is, and I had good ones, I mean, I was very fortunate, but I served the university, I served the academic mission, I served the faculty, I served the students, and if there's any time left over, any money left over, I can do something for the community. Well, you know, that's great when you're building a career. Sounds really good. And I mentioned I felt very lucky because, in fact, I worked for presidents that valued the community probably more than a lot of other presidents at colleges and universities did, because they all don't see it the same way. But toward the end of my time, which would have been at Connecticut College, the shift was inward. Community didn't count. What community members wanted to see or wanted to talk about, wanted to experience, came secondary to what the faculty thought they needed. I say thought they needed for the student body. And I thought, this is really not what I signed up to do. It's not really my heart. We think about the infusion, which has been ever present in my mind, of spirituality, of God's will on art forms. And I don't think God would have said, worry about the faculty first, because they're not getting raises. So they need to get some treatment, if you will. Okay, and you're the treater. Okay, so I got a headhunter call and said, would you ever consider going outside the university circuit and look at some things in Fort Wayne, Indiana? I thought, why not? And within really 72 hours, I met so many people in the community, and I met no faculty members. No college presidents. Well, I met John, but it's nicer than that. It doesn't really count when you're nice. Basically, I met no administration that said it can only be this, it can only be that. Who did I meet? People that said, well, it can be anything you think the community wants. Well, good. That's easy. It's easy to meet with people and find out what they're interested in. So that's the tale. That's my perspective. Right now, I think everybody probably knows that I'm a little bit overwrought about glass art. A little carried away. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. We've grown in the last 10 or 11 years from having no glass art to having 700 pieces of glass art. By September, we'll have about 1,100, 1,200 pieces of glass art. We're moving toward 3,000, 4,000 in the next 3-4 years. Major collectors all over the country have discovered that the Fort Wayne Museum and the Fort Wayne community embraces glass as an art form, not as a secondary craft form, but as an art form. And these collectors are saying, we want our glass to go where it counts. That's why the growth has been so big. So if there's anything big on the horizon right now, meaning like May, June, July, it's more glass. And watch for an announcement about the world's most famous sunflower piece of glass, which weighs 1,800 pounds and is valued at about $2.5 million, which will arrive in mid-May and be on display soon after. Thank you.
Beautiful display. Brittany, talk to us about the film.
Hi everybody, I'm Brittany Hall, and my story is quite similar to Charles. I received a call from a headhunter asking me to come to Fort Wayne and looking at the community, and my journey has taken me from a place of music is a right for everyone, and how do we build that power of community through music as an entity that can really reach any individual, and how do we make sure that symphony orchestras are able to serve the community. So my question to this community is, how can the Philharmonic help Fort Wayne? How can we bring music to create solace, to create unity within the community, and how do we balance that too with the artistic needs of our musicians and some of the questions that we'll be discussing later, such as finances, and how do they all play a role to work together? Some of the things on our horizons coming up are new experiences for the community, and how can we bring you even closer and more intimate surroundings with music. So this year we launched a brand new General Electric's concert series. Our last one's coming up this Saturday. I do hope you can join us. But next season we're going to launch a new coffee concert series at 11 a.m. really designed to help educate our community about classical music. Sometimes we can be seen as a little stuffy, and if you don't understand classical music, it's really a barrier for you to take a step into the concert hall. So how can we break down some of those barriers and help entice people into this wonderful world of music? If you like music, if you're a music lover, you'll also love the orchestra. And it's that barrier that we need to break down to invite people into us. So really excited about that coffee concert series. And then right back to music is a right, we have a large announcement that will be coming up that will allow for families to attend our family concert series for free. So we worked very hard to make that happen, and that announcement will be coming out this summer.
Hi everybody, I know this church well. I've spent many hours in the bowels of it. I'm told the dressing rooms have been updated since I've been last in them, so when I was there they were a hall, and apparently they're larger than that, so that's great. So I'm the Dean of the College of Visual and Performing Arts. I did not arrive in Fort Wayne via a headhunter, just so you know. That's not how academia works. I wish it did, but it doesn't. I came to chair the Department of Theater in 2007, and I became Dean in 2012. The best job I ever had is the job I have now. So the question was, what are you looking forward to? What are you celebrating? So I have the best job in the whole wide world because all I get to do all day is advocate and talk about incredible students who are visual and performing artists, and my incredible staff and faculty. I supervise 100 part-time and full-time faculty who care deeply about their students and who are incredible artists in their own right. So is that not the best job in the whole wide world, right? All I do is advocate and try to make their lives more positive, make them have classrooms that are cutting edge, and give them an opportunity to shine in their own right. Our visual artists show all over the country. We just finished a beautiful production of The Tempest, starring my friend Kate Black, who's in the back of the room there. Yes. Beautiful job.
Was Brittany Bressler in that too?
Brittany composed the music for it.
Okay, she's a member
and
here.
she was in it and played the music alongside the live show.
She's also a member.
Yeah, she's terrific. Yeah, she's a graduate of our program. And I am, by trade, a professional director. I have unfortunately given up my professional arm of that. I used to direct around the country at regional professional theaters around the country, and as a dean, I can't really do that very easily. So I've given that up, but I do get to direct here in the city quite often and at school, so that is rewarding. So what do I have to look forward to? I have to look forward to the month of April, which I call it my joy month, because there's a concert or an open, tomorrow night I have an opening. We have the celebration of our staff appreciation dinner that I'm co-hosting tomorrow night. And I get lots of invitations from incredible students who have senior recitals and senior exhibitions all of April. So I call it my joy month because I just get to go out every night and celebrate students who are finishing their college education and are shining in their arts. And so April is my big month. There was one year, a couple years ago, I said, I've had off 2 Saturdays in April. And that's not very much, but really all the rest of it's filled with stuff I love doing, so, you know, it's great. So that's what and then I have, the other thing I would look forward to is you've probably heard, we're opening a $22 million music building, which we're in the throes of planning right now. So I sit every 2 weeks, I sit in meetings with about 14 people who all are talking about cement and cables that I don't understand. I just say, when do we get to talk about color? I'd like to bring this. So we're doing that.
So we talked about this on the Zoom, but let's talk about it here. Maybe John will kind of start back with you. But I'm particularly interested in how the pandemic has affected all of the arts. I think I shared, and you all know, that I recently read an article, I think it was in the New York Times, about how off-Broadway has suffered terribly, the effects of the pandemic, and is at 50% of theaters are shutting and what have you. So, you know, 2 years out, if we can even consider it 2 years, still feeling the effects of that. So maybe we'll start here and go down.
Yeah, I mean, the fact is, the masses have not returned to live theater. And there are many theaters across the country that are suffering because of that. In particular, I'll give 2 examples. Maybe you heard this story on NPR about 3 months ago. They were interviewing the director of the Goodman Theater. Have you gone to the Goodman Theater in Chicago? And the La Jolla Theater in California. The La Jolla Theater has a reputation of creating new work that, especially in the 1990s, moved to Broadway, especially musicals. And the Goodman Theater, if you know, is really known for creating new cutting work. That's what they're known for. And both of the executive directors were on this call, and both of them were talking about how desperate they were that their audiences were not returning in the ways that they were in the past. The Goodman in particular was having a problem because if you know the Goodman does original work, well, they had a difficult ask to begin with. People don't necessarily love to go to plays that they don't know, so they already had to build on their reputation only. And so that, in connection with the lack of return from COVID, the Goodman was really struggling, and they continue to struggle. I'm going there a week from Saturday to see a wonderful production of The Magic Flute by Mary Zimmerman. And I look forward to that, but that theater is struggling. And the La Jolla Playhouse, which is a resident professional theater with a huge national reputation, is not sending any of their work anywhere out of their house because they're not raising the funds they used to raise. So not only are people not coming back, not-for-profit funding sources are drying up as well. So that's the dilemma of live theater, unfortunately.
Yeah, so the symphony world is experiencing similar. We are not seeing audiences return. Fort Wayne is punching above our weight limit, though. We are seeing larger audience here and compared to cities similar in size to us. Our industry is projecting it's going to be a 3 to 5 year recovery period, and I think we're quickly learning that 3 to 5 years probably looks more 5 to 7 years as we see audiences come back to the Philharmonic. But we also have to realize that the world has changed since the pandemic, and what does that mean for an audience member? What does that mean for a subscription holder when more and more people are waiting until the day or the day prior to purchase their tickets because they're just not certain what they want to do, or they're prioritizing family over other things in the community? And that's really what some of our studies are showing us. You know, we all learned that when we had to be home, we loved spending time with our families and we wanted to do it more. So we're seeing those decisions start to be made. We are also seeing that orchestras that offer availabilities like daycare are seeing higher levels of 3 generations attending performances all at once. So how can we provide more resources to our audience to encourage participation in the arts? As John said, you know, the funding levels, Fort Wayne is very fortunate. We have a very generous community that helps support the symphony here. But on the national scale, funding is starting to go away. The orchestra, it's something that we've been working on for 30 plus years, is bringing diversity to our stages. We're one of the last art forms that the majority of musicians you see on stage are still predominantly white, and working on some of those inclusion factors. But we're seeing foundations, large ones such as Carnegie Mellon, saying we're no longer supporting the symphony orchestras anymore. We've given you 30 years to rectify this problem, but we're not seeing a change in the systemic behavior and how we put musicians on stage. So that's something that we're closely and carefully looking at, and Fort Wayne's actually part of a national study now to diversify our musicians on stage and how we're handling that and how do we become more inclusive. To represent a community, we also need to have that representation on stage and performing as well. So those are some areas that we're looking at as we try to regain and rebuild our audiences here in Fort Wayne.
In contrast to what John and Brittany both have experienced and we're experiencing now, if you come to see theater, if you come to see music, you're sitting beside your neighbor. I feel blessed that the nature of our business is that you probably come with 1 or 2 people and you chose to come as a little group, and by nature, you probably don't want to butt into the next group or have them butt into yours. This is your little group. You just had lunch, or you're going to lunch, or doing something. So we bounced back faster in attendance, but attendance at a museum is a lot less expensive than attendance at a theatrical event or a Philharmonic event. So it didn't mean a lot of money, it just meant we had a lot of traffic. I will tell you that I also feel blessed that our supporters stepped up and we got new supporters. But by contrast, and I think Brittany and John have both experienced this too, there's a number of foundations, locally even, that during that time decided to rethink what they were going to do with their money and who they were going to support and who they weren't going to support. And in one fell swoop, and I think you both may have experienced the same thing, we lost 3 funders locally who have 25 years plus experience with us, who cut us out, costing us $200,000 and change every year. Now, when you sell $10 tickets, that's a lot of extra tickets to sell. So that's the tougher thing to bounce back from than the pandemic stuff. And those actions on those funders' part had very little to do with the pandemic and more to do with politics and new leadership. And, oh, did I hear a new college president again? So you know the good deeds, but what you don't know is who's at the top seat and where they're aiming the thing. I think we're all in Fort Wayne. This is a pendulum swing, is my theory. People come, people go. People will regain their senses and get behind what they should. In the meantime, I'll tell you what, we're resilient, and all 3 of us have met these adversarial conditions financially with gusto and with positivism, and I think our audiences appreciate that.
I want to talk about one thing about the funding, if you don't mind, that Charles just talked
Jump
about.
right in.
So it's, I think what people don't realize, so 95% of theaters in America are not-for-profit.
95%
95% of all theaters in America are not-for-profit. That, I mean not-for-profit from the church theater downstairs to the Civic Theater to the Goodman Theater are not-for-profit theaters. Even though they might be at a professional level, they're not-for-profit. The only commercially profit theaters, the 5% that exists, are in New York City and a couple other locations in the country. Otherwise, everyone else is not-for-profit. And here's the other fact I want you to know, is that 50% of their income is earned income through a ticket sale. The other 50% is through unearned. Their gift shop, but mainly is through gifts and foundations that support them. That's 50% of their ticket price, or 50% of their overhead has to come from not their ticket sales. That puts a lot of people, that's putting a lot of theaters in danger when funders leave and ticket sales go down. Both of those categories. That used to be a 60-40 relationship, 60% ticket sales and 40%, it's now 50-50 across the country.
And so John, do you think, and I want you to weigh in here too, Brittany, do you think with 50% ticket sales, do you think that's probably headed in the future? It was 60-40, it's 50-50. Are we headed to 40-60?
I think that we are, I think if we could maintain 50-50, we'd be lucky.
We'd be lucky, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Wayne.
Yeah, and I think that was what was so interesting to me when we came together on that phone call too, is how similar we are, but how different we are. So in our industry, before the pandemic, ticket sales were bringing in about 30% of the overall budget.
So pre-pandemic, 30% of their income was ticket sales.
Yeah, so we've actually declined. We're about 22% right now, but we're holding pretty strong. There's places like Kalamazoo, Michigan, and some other similar, they're right around the 8 to 10%. So our industry is starting to ask those questions about if music's a right, you know, what should the accessible ticket price be for a person entering the hall, and how do we sustain our organization when we're talking about 22% of our overall budget just coming from ticket sales alone, and the rest has to be funded through private individuals or foundations.
So when I go to see Magic Flute at the Goodman Theater a week from Saturday, I spent almost $200 for 2 seats. But I'm willing to do that because I Mary Zimmerman, the title, all of that. I want to do that. One of my students is involved as well, so I want to do that. And when you go to New York, forget about it. You all know what's happening. And that's commercial theater, right? But when the Civic Theater charges, what are they charging now? $35, $38 a ticket? They have to. in order to keep a not-for-profit theater in our community, they have to charge $38 for a ticket or whatever it is. They just have to.
It's just what you do.
So a little bit, kind of along the same lines, a little bit different, and Brittany, you touched on this with talking about daycare. I was fascinated by that, of offering daycare at a concert. What are other things that you all are finding that you need to do to attract people either back or maybe new audiences to what it is you're doing? What are you finding you need to offer folks?
Yeah, so one of the things that we're really focusing on with the symphony is universal design and accessibility. How do we make sure that people can make it to the concert, and once they do, they feel like they're in a safe environment? One of the items, we offer transportation. Transportation, public transportation in our city is lacking. So making sure that we have a bus, because it's not only someone who you can see a disability, but it might be, well, we need bigger font in the preludes because my eyes are tired. It's also, well, I can't drive at night. So how do we make sure we're making the concerts accessible to everybody, along with being sensory friendly, which we now have all those accessibilities at all of our concerts. Making sure that parents know, and really educating our school teachers too, because a child's interacting and expressing him or herself with the music doesn't mean that child should be removed because they're not showing proper concert etiquette.
Right.
What does that mean? And how do we move forward in a world where we are also teaching that concert etiquette, but realizing that some might not have the ability or just have the sheer joy and want to express what they're hearing? So, we're promoting and producing videos to actually teach school teachers how to react when they're experiencing these children in their classrooms, and working with the AWS Foundation on that.
Well, your last one is really interesting, because I'm sure everyone in the room has wondered why those babies all cry during the homily. And it's not because they don't agree with the homily at all. That's what they do. And you want them there, but you do have to accommodate. And in the museum, again, a little bit differently approached, because in fact, we don't have to contain you in a seat quietly paying attention to the players, the actors. You're pretty much more on your own. But what is it you want to see? What is it you want to feel or do? Now, I happen to really put a lot of emphasis on what I would call the oasis concept. There's pain all around us. There's stress all around us. Reduced funds, fighting, division, all that stuff. We don't do any of that. We're an oasis of beauty as we think God intended to be. You come in, you're going to be confronted with beauty. You're not going to be confronted with a lot of art that's going to bring up a lot of the other things. But let somebody else do that. Everybody's ready to do something different. We're about the beauty, and it brings me back to 3 words: glass, glass, glass. I rest my case. It's always beautiful.
Listen, I had some friends come from Minneapolis and St. Paul in January to visit for a weekend, and we went to dinner, as he said, to lunch, and then we went over to the museum to see the glass exhibit. These people were blown away by that glass exhibit. After we walked out, they said, "Gotta tell you, I expected chandeliers and some vases." And that's not what that is. They were just so blown away by it. I said, I told you it wasn't going to be, I said, just wait till you see it. Because people's expectation is chandeliers and vases, and it was not that. So, and they're from Minneapolis, St. Paul, which is a pretty big visual art town. And they were just completely blown away by our Museum of Art. So, congratulations, Charles. They just loved it. So.
Love to hear that.
I want to talk about something that was on your slide. And it was about this idea of entertainment.
I was going to ask that next, so go
Were you?
ahead.
Okay, I'm
I was.
sorry.
Perfect, go ahead. No.
So I love that word because, so I used to teach back in the day, general education. Those are the kids that are taking a theater class. Todd's nodding because he's taught it himself. Right? These are the kids who are taking a theater class because they, it's going to be the easy one. He's a nice guy. We watch some videos, and I get an A. It's fabulous. I'm going to take my general education theater class and take it from John O'Connell because he's a lot of fun. But I love talking to my students about the word entertainment. Because when I asked 18 to 20-year-olds what's entertainment, they automatically say, oh, I had a great time. I laughed. I was funny. She sang, she danced, she was entertaining. But the books of theater define entertainment as, I love this, that which holds our attention.
Nice.
Don't you love that definition of entertainment?
Yes.
That which holds our attention. So if I don't get bored of the symphony, I'm being entertained. If I stand in front of a beautiful piece of art or glass, and I am intrigued by it and I'm entertained because it holds my attention, I am entertained.
Right.
That which holds our attention is entertaining. I love that. I'm sorry, when I saw that word, I love teaching that because it changes my students' perspective completely about what entertainment is, because they think it's just this idea of something light and fun.
Well, and along those same lines, I'm wondering about the push and pull for all of you between the entertainment and the education. So when you have a concert that plays along to Star Wars, I'll use that as an example,
Right.
or you're playing Beethoven's Ninth, what is the reception, or Shakespeare compared to a musical? You know, are you feeling like, am I selling out? Am I just trying to get people in the seats? Or do you need to do that to get people in the seats so they come back for Beethoven's
You do.
Ninth or Shakespeare or what have you?
But I'll
Where's the magic line?
Well, there isn't one, and theater is a little bit strapped, I think, because of this 50-50 dilemma we're in. So many of the theaters that I've worked with across the country are just really resorting to Greece, Oklahoma, and prom. Because I love prom, but I mean...
It is selling. It was full.
So I did a lot of work at Playhouse on the Square in Memphis. It's a wonderful professional theater with 2 beautiful theaters. And about 10 years ago, they have a full season in 2 different theaters, and they've resorted to 12 to 13 musicals a year in order to get people into their seats. They do maybe 4 or 5 straight plays, and if they do a straight play, it's in their small house. It's never in their main house. The only thing in their main house are their large musicals, because it's the only way they can survive.
Wow.
So, I don't know what to say about that, other than, you know, it's a generation that we're creating on fast and furious entertainment.
TikTok.
So that's the dilemma of theater, I think, is that. Now, I have a different mission at a university. I have students I have to train in the words of great Shakespeare. I have a Western canon they have to be familiar with. I don't have to rely on ticket sales the way other theaters do, and I have a different mission. I have students who in the course of 4 years have to encounter all kinds of plays. So it's slightly a different mission. So.
Yeah, so, I mean, is it music or is it money? We ask ourselves that question almost every day, and what does entertainment mean? And I really love that definition of entertainment, because it shows that for different perspectives, it could mean different things to anyone. So, you know, the question, is it Star Wars or is it Beethoven? Well, why can't it be both? But it is something that we struggle with 60 professional musicians on the stage every day. You know, that's also a group of people that I need to take into great consideration. How are we fulfilling them artistically? This is the music that they were trained to play, and you know, if I ask them to play Disney princess movie music, because that's what's going to sell the tickets, you know, is it fulfilling them? But how can we balance both? Because music is for everyone, and it might take that Star Wars concert in order to introduce them to a symphony orchestra. I grew up in a very rural, upstate New York town, less than 70 people in my graduating class, and I wasn't introduced to a professional orchestra until I was in college, and that's where I really fell in love with the art form. And I want to make sure that we are introducing the orchestra to as many people as we can without numerous barriers to create that love. And I just think about where I would be if I had that in my life when I was in kindergarten, you know, building that appreciation, love for music. But I think, you know, it's that balance, and it's that push and pull and that tension that It keeps us on our toes as an organization. We're here to serve the community. So what does that question also mean too? It's great to have musicians on stage playing the highest artistic quality and fulfilling themselves, but is that really our mission? Our mission is to play live classical music for the community. How can we serve them through that? And we can't serve the community if they're not there buying tickets and in our audience and in our halls. So it's a difficult question to answer, and one that we talk about very, very frequently, almost every day, of how do we balance that artistic excellence question with the entertainment question, or just the access question, as I like to see it, as what's going to introduce someone to the symphony.
Well, now, again, I'm talking too much about glass, but let me tell you. My Joseph Dreamcoat is Chihuly. The biggest bane of my existence in many ways. But really, the person, as an early student, had the charisma to teach and advocate for the medium over such a broad stretch of different young artists that you can't take away from what he gave the whole trend, the whole medium. Although you've got to get away from Dale, you know, because everybody comes in like zombies. Give me Chihuly, another Chihuly. And also within that group of people, if you don't do Chihuly in a certain way, the way they saw at the last big museum, you didn't do it right, so you didn't do Chihuly. So our big stretch has been, and we're so delightful to hear John's guests enjoy it, is that we are giving you Chihuly's students and his students and the whole 9 yards with him in it, but we're not going too overboard about Dale, because it's bigger than that. If you just did Dale, then you're doing, because I like his definition of entertainment, but you are doing sensationalism, and you're living there, and you're doing the Beatles and you're not doing classical music. And the Beatles are great, but somebody else played the Beatles, more or less. So we all struggle with some version of that. But here, you know, the other side of it is we all, this is an interesting panel of people to be up here with, because we all really care about people in the community, about, you know, normal people. Not, oh my goodness, if you're not in this seat, we don't really want you in the door. No, we want everybody in the door. We believe in the things that we do, and we believe that you will love them too. And I think we all sort of aim for the average person that doesn't identify as a special classical person, theater person, or certainly an art museum person. My best customers, I don't know if I'm gonna like this or not. Great, come on in. Let's see if we can make you like it. And I think we all three are committed to making that happen. And so if it entertains you as it engages you, I'm so happy for you. It's a positive thing.
So one last question before I turn it over to all of them. I'm aware of our time. Knowing what you do about First Pres and our arts, our theater, we have this fantastic music series that we don't charge for. We have a gallery downstairs that does not rely on sales. What is our little niche here, in our niche in this little neck of the woods? What do you think?
Well, you know I have a strong opinion about
I
that.
do,
Annie.
John. I do.
I don't know if I should be the one to answer that
Well,
question. I have a very strong opinion about that. And that is because I arrived in 2007, about 3 months after I arrived, and I was looking at a theater program, schedule. And a little theater called First Presbyterian Church was doing a play called Rabbit Hole. That is a very controversial play. It encounters the human experience in some of the most difficult manner ever. And I said, what? This First Presbyterian Church is doing a play called Rabbit Hole? Is doing the play Rabbit? What? I have to go to this church. I have to see this play. It was a beautiful production of a really difficult play. No lines were cut. No ideas were belittled in any way. And it was one of the most moving experiences I've had in the theater in a long, long time. I love your theater. It is my favorite theater in this city, and you can tell anybody you want that. I'm serious, because as a director, I've directed there many times. My friend Kate Black, and I'll get off this soapbox soon, but no one else in town is going to offer me the opportunity to direct one of the most important plays in the Western canon, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. That is an important play. And I was offered to direct it here with my dear friend Kate Black starring, and she was incredible. But only here was I offered that. And only here was I offered to direct a beautiful play called Heroes, about 3 retired military, you're shaking your heads, 3 retired military men put out to pasture in a nursing home. And they spent the play trying to escape their reality. And it was a comedy, no less. Right? You're the only theater in this town willing to do that. Please don't stop being willing to do that. The Civic Theater can't do it because they can't afford it. They have to sell 50% of their tickets on ticket sales. They're doing a play called 6 Degrees of Separation right now, which is a very difficult play to do as well, and I'm really proud that they can do it. But they won't be doing one of those again for a long time because they can't afford to do it. So what do I believe is the mission of the theater, at least? Is to continue to do the prom. Like you said, nobody else in town will even take a stab at it, right? But also don't give up on the important plays that our community should be aware of, that other people in town don't have the courage or the availability to do because it might not sell every seat in the house. Do it because the plays are important. Do it because the voice of the playwright is important. And do it because you have actors in town who are dying to do plays like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I'm off my soapbox.
Well, John, I don't know how to follow that one. But what I can say is, like John with the actors, continuing to employ Philharmonic musicians. What's special about this town is we have a full-time professional orchestra. And it's much, much different when you have a small per-service orchestra coming in and out. You don't know the musicians. They're not here teaching their children. They're not here playing in your Sunday church services. Continue to employ the Philharmonic musicians and add them to your music series. And I just got a lovely tour of your beautiful theater. It is remarkable. And I'd love to see the Philharmonic here doing more events downstairs. And how can we be a part of that? And how can the Philharmonic help you? Very good.
And I would simply add to what John and Brittany both had to say, is that within the visual arts, this is a different time than it was even just a decade ago. And it has nothing to do with the virus or anything else. It has to do with the changes in who's presenting the visual arts and why they're presenting them and how they're presenting them. And raise your hand if you know Betty Fishman. She's still alive and kicking. And she calls me all the time to say, why isn't ArtLink supporting people who are trying to build their careers and move on? A ladder to the top. Well, Betty, I don't know. I don't run ArtLink. All of the process. You're forgetting that. I never did. Okay. But you have an opportunity in the same way that John's talking about the theater. You have an opportunity with your gallery to think for a minute about all the people training in the Midwest, undergraduate and graduate school, who don't know, because of the way our training in visual arts goes, we don't know the ladder to get to the next step. We do know how to get from the freshman year to the senior year, but we're not sure beyond that what we do. Do we go to grad school and teach? Do we become professional artists? How do you become a professional artist? We don't know any of that. And ArtLink used to be a place, this is what Betty gives me a hard time about. ArtLink used to be dedicated in Betty's day to being a place where artists who've made it already on a regional level would help those who are coming up, come up. And ArtLink, I think, is trying to do some version of that. They're heroic, but you could step in, not that you want to, I'm just suggesting, you can step in because of the nature of what the church is trying to accomplish and bring those voices up and help them figure out what to do, show their work, show them steps, offer them guidance.
Interesting. Great. I'm so glad I asked that question. All right, it's now your turn to ask questions. Who's got a question?
I have a comment.
Phil, I'm gonna, hold on for now. Go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna suggest something, and I want your response to it. Let's say only 15, 10, 20% of the populace has ever been in the art, in Fort Wayne, has ever been in the art museum, has ever been to a Philharmonic concert, has ever been to a play at VFW. Do you think there is a chance that they just don't feel comfortable, welcome? I mean, they feel okay walking into McDonald's, but they don't feel okay walking into, just going to the concert, let alone the fact just for the Philharmonic, they might applaud between the movements rather than in repeats and whatever. Or you know, do you feel as though, is there any way that you can better welcome those first timers in any of those events? I mean, where do you park at PFW, you know, just answer the easy questions to get those people that have never been there.
Yeah, no, I think there are a lot of different avenues that we can go down. A lot of it starts with education and making sure that people come appropriately understanding what's going on, or encouraging them to clap in between movements. Now, personally, I know a lot of musicians don't like it. I think it's great to show the appreciation of the art form, and I think our industry's slowly changing too. But I think there is a lot more that we can do in welcoming them and then welcoming them back. One of our most challenging pieces is when we have a new person attending the Philharmonic and they say, wow, this is a really great show, I want to continue coming back, is that we might not have a similar show like that for another 2 or 3 years. So what's sort of the next gateway in order to continue welcoming back to something that they want to see again?
We have that problem with the church, just so you know.
That's speaking of rabbit hole, that question is a rabbit hole to go down for a long time. I'm not going to go into it other than this is a generational challenge we have. So it's in the education system. If I've never been in a theater and I'm 22 years old, it's going to be hard to get them into a theater. If I didn't go to a theater when I was in junior high or high school, I didn't go to a concert, and I'd never been to a museum, like, why am I going to a museum? I'm 25 years old, I've never been to a museum, you know. So it's a generational thing. So our goal, our journey, and prom is a good way to do it, is to introduce art and art forms to a population that they're interested in seeing as 15-year-olds. Because if they come to prom at 15, they'll come back to First Pres to see something else. Yep. Right? So if the symphony can get them in for Star Wars, they might come with their parents to the next Beethoven evening.
Right.
So that's my answer to that.
And I want to piggyback on that because I don't know if you know this, but 3 years ago, 2021, we started doing what we call a Mad Camp Music, Art, Drama, and Dance here. And we partner with the Fort Wayne Youth Theater. We have Dance Collective, the Children's Chorus 1 year, but Brent is very involved in the music as well. Todd, Carrie, they've all had a hand in it. We have retired art teachers here. And we have 100 kids at that camp. And the first time I talked to somebody about doing that and told them what I thought we could charge, they were like, you could charge $200 or $300 for that camp. And I said, but our aim isn't to make any money, sorry, on that camp. It's to see these art forms come together and do something really for the community and children. So in that sense, we have brought in those kids to be
Build
on
a
the stage,
generation.
to sing together, to make some art. And at the end, they actually put on a big performance on Friday night. It's fun. It's really been nice to see. So, Brunel, you had a comment.
I don't know how long ago it was, they used to have docents go in to all the schools for a 5th grade performance and bring them and educate them about the piece that was going to be played, and then they all came to the embassy at that time for it. Is there any chance, because that
Yeah,
really
so
educating?
She asked about the docent program, for those of you who maybe couldn't hear.
Yeah, so I've heard about that docent program. It's been quite a few years since the Philharmonic's done that.
Yes.
A piece of the concert or the coffee series next year will be inviting 5th grade classrooms into that concert because it happens during the day, during the school day. So we're hoping to bring that piece back where we're able to introduce those 5th graders to the orchestra in a special way.
Any questions? You guys are a quiet group tonight.
Add a point to Brittany's answer for you. There's a case where COVID really shut everything down.
Oh, yeah.
It's difficult to do anyway, but I'll tell you, before COVID, we did 26,000 kids in their schools, besides the 12,000 that come to us. The school said, nobody comes in anymore. I mean, it was natural, they're protecting, but it shut the program right down, and we may be up to a couple thousand or so back again, but everybody, the pattern changes, and they're not used to seeing you in the building with your docents, and you know, it's beyond the mask and all that. It's just, well, I don't know, it was very disruptive, wasn't it?
Well, there's a whole, I don't go into this either, but there's a whole minor protection policies that are now, schools are now having to legally deal with, so they don't invite strangers into their school who haven't gone through a minor protection check, et cetera, et cetera. I applaud them for doing that, but that's just barriers they have to go through, so it's easier for them to go, we don't have time to do minor checks on all these visitors in our school, so.
Right.
Could the church be the place, or would you still have to have a minor protection rules in place if this were a neutral place to entertain or to educate the kids?
Sure, it could be, yeah.
She asked if the church could be the neutral place where both the arts and the kids come and meet up, rather than having to go into the school. Okay, Jane.
A population that I think about a lot in relation to First Pres is a growing number of 20 to 40-year-olds who live right here, right wherever next door is, and within an easy walk. And I'm wondering, we wonder how we can involve that population here in the heart of the city, and what about the arts, getting that population involved?
So they're just like students, food and alcohol. Students can't have the alcohol, but they can have the food. Whenever we put food out, hundreds of students come to our things, right? So in the 90s, not-for-profit, off-Broadway theaters started having professional cocktail hours before their plays. They would have Merrill Lynch employees, right? They'd call Merrill Lynch and say, we're going to do an evening of cocktails for any of your young employees who want to come to Manhattan Class Company, which is the theater that I work at, MCC, and we want them to see our play. And so we're going to partner with Merrill Lynch, and they're going to just say, hey, they're going to give you wine and food. And people say, okay, fine, as long as they had a message avenue. So often opening your theater up to pre-events, to young people who live here, is a great way to get them in the door and give them some wine and cheese. Free wine and cheese. I mean, look at your gallery openings. They're quite successful, but everybody walks up to that wine counter and that cheese
They
counter.
sure do want
They
to.
like that food.
And the last one, we had no food, and somebody said, where is the food?
Exactly. I'm telling you, they will come. You feed them down.
And we do now have a liquor license. We sold alcohol at
Yeah.
prom. Yes, yes, we did.
We're
Talked
way
back
down.
there.
It was very interesting in the 90s, these theaters, they were like, we're losing our audiences. they're growing out.
Yeah.
And so they just reached out to these large firms and said, we'll give you a free opportunity to bring your employees together if you State Farm play. And it was hugely popular, picked up all over.
I'm aware of the time. I'll take one more question if anybody has one, and maybe you all can stick around for a minute or two if anybody has anything else. All right, well, I'm going to give you a big round of applause. I know you all are very busy people, and so just thank you for giving your time and your thoughts and your opinions. Really appreciate that.
Happy to do it.
Friends, 6:30 next week. And we will probably go a little bit longer next week because of the nature of how we're going to do the brainstorming. So if you don't mind, plan on staying until 8 o'clock. But you should leave with an exhaustive list of what you all have put forth. So 6:30, if you have any questions about that, let me know. And thank you again for being here.
Thank you all. Thank you all.